a little open Q&A. We find that the talks always in the morning go a bit too fast, and as everyone kind of thinks of a question later, so I've gathered a panel of distinguished guests, and Will, to answer any questions from the audience. So we'll start with just introductions. Who have we got here?
Yeah, I'm Ollie MacDonald, effects artist from Gorilla Cambridge.
I'm Malcolm Kelly. I run assets for environments and stuff at Gorilla Cambridge.
I'm Will Burdett, and I'm a modeller at Framestore.
I'm Victoria Long, and I'm from Double Negative, and I'm a recruiter, sorry.
I'm Mike Farrell, and I'm a 2D recruiter at MPC.
Hello, I'm Daniel Greaves from Tandem Films, and made a film called Mr. Plastiline that you saw earlier.
And very nice it was too. I'm Mike Banbury, I'm an art director at Sony.
I'm Simon Wright, I'm Group Head of Talent at The Mill.
I'm Aidan Gibbons, I'm a CG lead at The Mill.
Hi, I'm Gamma Basra, I work for Foster & Partners, the architects, so I'll be looking at the ArcViz market.
Well, lovely. So, I dare I say it, is there a question from this gaggle of people? Oh, even with lights, even with, no one's going to ask now, too scared. No? Oh, that's it. Oh, we do, there's one, the first one. Someone broke ranks. Software and games?
Yeah.
I think I know the answer, but there's a couple of people. Start at that end and then Mike can follow up.
All of them is a good start. We use Maya primarily, but we use any tool that seems suitable at the time. So I think if you try and spread yourself really wide and learn everything, you're not going to learn anything in any depth. ZBrush is very common. Actually, Maya we use, but as Ollie mentioned, we use Houdini. There are people who use 3D Studio.
You might need to speak into
Sorry.
it.
So there's people, but people who use 3D Studio, people who use Softimage, there's all sorts. I mean, we have a sort of primary output for our pipeline, which is Maya, but it's probably not worth trying to second guess it. I'd have said if we really had to take a survey, Maya was probably the most popular.
I think also it largely depends on your specialization. Obviously, if you're a modeler, you're more likely to need Maya or Max and ZBrush, whereas as an effects artist, you know, Houdini or stuff like that is what you're more likely to use, really.
Mike?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think it's not just the software, right? It's what you can do and it's your work. And, you know, if somebody's got really amazing work and they just know 3D Max, you know, we're going to hire them and then there's going to be a bit of a learning curve and they'll switch over to Maya. Our studio tends to support pretty much licenses for everything. We've got Max, Maya. We're pretty much a Maya studio. ZBrush, Mudbox, but we are kind of phasing out Max. Now, I don't know if this is to do with Autodesk. I think Autodesk are trying to finally bring Maya's modeling tools up to speed and that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, very similar to the guys from Gorilla, you know, we use similar things for the VFX stuff, and also we have our own proprietary software, which you can't learn, you know, you could only learn when you joined, so. But yeah, it's not a big deal, it's all about how good your reel is.
I guess it's the same for the visual effects industry as well. You have one of everything, and as long as it gets the job done, right? Do you want to?
Well, sorry. From a modeling standpoint, we primarily use Maya just because everyone does. But as far as you were saying, Mudbox, at Framestore we use Mudbox loads. Gravity was all done in Mudbox. But we also use ZBrush, so I'd say I split my time 50-50 between the two packages. Some things work better in one than the other.
Yeah. I'm sure we've said it before, but it's the skill set behind the tools which are the most important thing. And whatever we teach you in the first year, by the time you get to the third year, will have changed. And whatever company you go to will have the other software, because that's the way it goes.
Well, I came here 6 years ago, and we were taught 3D Studio Max. I started at Framestore, and it's all Maya. I opened Maya for like the first time. a week before I started at Frame Store. And now it's all I use. So yeah, in the industry, you're using it 8 hours a day, every day. You will pick up anything quickly.
Yeah, I agree. Cool. Another question? Somewhere in there. At the back?
This is primarily aimed at the visual effects industry. What are your thoughts on Modo?
Oh, more software. Modo?
Not used it.
Oh, there's email maybe?
Modo is actually really good. We've been...
Well, like you're shocked. Well, thanks, Foundry.
Yeah. Yeah, Foundry have been coming in quite a bit, so we're loving Modo. Everyone's trying to kind of pick it up. And since Software Manage is being kind of dropped, a lot of people are actually picking Modo up. It's not like your all-round package, but it's a really good piece of kit, actually. You can't do much like animation and stuff in it yet, but it's Foundry, so we have got a lot of faith in that company. And it would be silly to ignore the software. So actually we are using Modo now, and it's cool.
Cool. Question at the front?
This is specifically aimed at Gambas and the archivist industry. Have you guys seen a shift from the classical architectural visualization side of things towards more interactive kind of tours? And is that something you're interested in looking into?
Yeah, the interactive tours are great, and they're great for more marketing sort of companies and things, yeah. But from an internal point of view, we're using anything that's real time as well. So things like Keyshot, we're using CryEngine as well. So we've got some CryEngine artists. So anything that we can get a real response and show the architects their designs quickly, and the design can evolve faster. So absolutely, so it has changed.
I guess that leads on to kind of there was a bit of a thing this morning between pre-rendered and real-time. It was kind of really juxtaposed between the two things. Is visual effects beginning to use more kind of, the visual effects industry beginning to use more real-time stuff? Because it was interesting to see Houdini go back to create particle sprites to be used again. There you answer.
We don't do any real time at Frame Store, I don't think. Is that right, Millie? Yeah.
I mean, just last night, you saw if anyone saw the RenderMan thing, they've actually releasing a new bit of software, and that's, again, that's aiming at real time, so real-time previews more than anything. So.
Yeah, we've had Chaos Group in a couple of times as well, because they have a new real-time engine, and it slipped my mind. I can't remember what it's called. I feel really bad, but
you're probably not allowed to tell anyone.
Yeah, I know. I think it's okay. And there is a short film being made at the moment with 2 robots in it. I don't know if anyone's seen it. Again, I can't remember the name of it. And it's all like real time, rendered on Titans, and we're actively looking into. I think we've actually bought a few of the Titans, and we're looking into it because you just see the real time stuff, and you just go, wow, that would take like 6-7 hours for us to render, and they're doing it once every 30, well, I can't remember what you said there, but it was, what was it, 0.01?
0.0001.
That's the one. Yeah, again, you'd be stupid to ignore stuff like that, so any new tech like that coming along, you have to pay attention to it. Yeah.
Yeah, we took a large group of students to FMX this year, and there was a talk from ILM saying that they've got a real-time explosions tool, basically, which is why they can do transformers and all the other things which have a bazillion explosions in. Whereas if you'd done it a year ago, they couldn't have done that amount of work. But I think there's a real collision happening between VFX real-time comp. There's a kind of generalist thing happening around all our industries at the moment.
I was going to say, Sol, sorry. Just, I was at Pixar a little while ago, having a look around, and really interesting place. If you get a chance to go, because it's really cool. But one thing that I did notice, they had a sort of poster on the wall, which was a sort of real-time challenge. And they they've obviously got some really good sort of, technical people and programmers and rendering guys, because it's all their own stuff. But they were really interested in what they could actually do in a frame, real time. That was a real sort of interesting area for them. So I think there is definitely something happening. I think you're right.
Yeah. Another question? Anyone dare? There were some interesting talks this morning. You might have questions about them. Oh, at the front, there you go. It's an interesting one. Political, I like it. Who'd have thought it?
Well,
from this bunch.
Being on PS4, being a new platform, piracy isn't that much of a huge issue for us so far, I think. But I mean, from the development side, it doesn't really come into our mind. We don't really develop things thinking about how easy it is to pirate.
Have you seen it have a negative impact against game development, though? There's a lot of kind of, if you're not on a console, the PC market's pretty rife for things going missing.
Well, I'm a big PC gamer. Sorry to shatter your illusions. But, the PC's got a very open platform, and there's brilliant things like Steam. And I think console manufacturers are certainly trying to move towards that, where you can have, obviously, digital release and whatnot. That if you make it easier for people to just buy your game than pirate it, then people are more likely to buy it, And that's what people have been moving towards. If you look at all the PlayStation Store and stuff, the heavy push towards cheap downloadable titles, as well as PS Plus, which is really good value, free for us. But yeah, I'm chiming out.
No, I'm not.
Film industry? There you answer the question.
I was just going to say, from yourself, when you get into the industry as an artist, the piracy doesn't really affect you in a sense, because the studio works on a fixed bid, so all your money's coming up front, so you don't have to worry about ticket sales. You're not seeing that money, that's going somewhere else. So you're working as an industry that's before the piracy comes in. I suppose the big problem is for the client. They're the ones going to have the problem, but the shows keep coming in. They're going to keep making films.
They've got to make their money some way to pay for you guys, though. There's definitely a thing there.
Oh yeah, but I mean, I'm just saying, if you, it might be a naive point, but if you look at something like Gravity, we had every single review we saw for that was see it in the cinema, and everyone did. It made huge ticket sales, and so it shows if you do the good work, it looks better in the cinema, and people are going to go see it there.
I think there definitely has been a trend of making sure that the theatrical release is the best, because when it trickles down, it's going to kind of get cheapened and cheapened and cheapened. And the people that aren't going to go to the cinema aren't going to go to the cinema anyway.
Well, I don't know if you call this piracy, but we make a series of cartoons on YouTube called Simon's Cat. I don't know if anybody's aware of that.
I've just fallen in love with you a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
And that, you could call it piracy, but the very first one that we did was put onto YouTube without our consent. So, but we thank anybody whoever that was who put it on. We thank them profusely. It was never meant for YouTube, but then we saw all the hit levels, and we thought, okay, we're onto something. And then we commissioned the second one, and third, and fourth, and etc. And now it's quite a phenomenon. So, is that piracy? I'm not sure, but it's served us well.
I think there's definitely a quality bar that has to be increased now, because people won't pay money for something they don't think is good. There isn't a kind of, I'll pay a bit of money. It's expensive to go to the cinema, or it's expensive to buy a game. That's why the quality of what you guys have to produce has to raise its bar. So I think there's having quite a good period at the minute.
Most pirates are a little snobbish. They won't download the shitty cam films.
Well, I read an article the other day that Netflix bases its purchasing strategy off of download piracy stuff. So if a TV series does very, very well from people downloading it, they will then go after it, because that's their target market of people that can't be bothered to download things, but they like Breaking Bad. So that's why they went after it, and they'll fund things like House of Cards and other things. So it's interesting that people are looking at this sort of stuff, but in a positive spin, using it as a market trend. Another question, I quite like that one, but... Oh, at the front.
I've got a bit of a different question to ask. It's just to you really, because I really love the Mime film, and I love Simon's Cat. It's the funniest thing. I was just kind of wondering, at the start of the year, we had to think of all our own story ideas, and it was really difficult to find something original and to get humour right. And I just wondered if you had a strategy of going about it, or a way that you saw new ideas.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's a good question. Well, with Simon's Cat, we do it in various ways. Some of the films come out from ideas from the books. We've done a series of books, and some of them come from that, from Simon's mind, really. Simon's incredibly prolific. And then other times, in order not to repeat ourselves, we don't do the same thing that just appears in the book. We get round a table and brainstorm ideas and come up with usually it helps when people do have cats themselves, because there's a wealth of ideas from cats. It's amazing how much you can come up with. Just the other day, I watched my cat walking into wind, and that was straight away. I thought that's a Simon's Cat idea. It's got to be made. So it's usually observation. It's usually initially. I think also with my film, Plastic Mime, a lot of it's based on observation. So it's writing down ideas that have made you laugh yourself, and keeping a notepad of things that might not necessarily be a fully fledged story, but has a kernel of an idea there which you can develop and expand on. And that's kind of that's how I work, and that's how I think Simon works as well.
Isn't it someone said there's only 6 story ideas ever? They're all just variations of it.
Some people have said there's only one. But they're knobs.
Say it like it is. Next question. Anybody? Oh, down the side.
With using social media and things like YouTube video for distributing your artwork, how do you monetize on that platform? For example, Simon's Cat.
Are we going to talk about Simon's Cat for the rest of the episode? I'm happy to.
How do we monetize? Well, we monetize it through AdSense. Through if you get enough hits, then you can start advertising space on the site, and that's how we kind of are able to pay our small crew to keep the Simon Cat franchise going. Really, books don't particularly make a lot of money, but it's really just advertising. And now we're thinking of other ways of making more kind of sort of pushing it up a bit with slightly longer form films, but it's sort of early days at the moment.
With the games industry, what about indie game making and director kind of market? There's smaller companies. How has that affected you, or have you got an opinion on it, or would you like to work for a small games company? Pass the mic.
Lots of my friends do work for small indie companies, and people do go from large companies into indie companies. They start their own companies. It's quite tough. It's quite a tough business. It's not a case of, you disappear into a sort of hole in the ground for 2 years and come out with a game, and then suddenly people are sort of, you're buying a jet and stuff like that. It really isn't like that, and I don't think it's been like that. Even looking back at some of the sort of big ones like Angry Birds and that kind of thing, I was reading the figure, I can't remember what it is, but the amount of money they spend, their marketing spend on that was just unbelievable. It wasn't like that they came up with a nice little game and then suddenly it shot to massive fame. They spent an absolute bomb marketing that thing, and they increased the spend absolutely, very clever, and they've done really well with it. But yeah, so, I think, this isn't a Sony opinion, this is just my opinion, but I think if there's cool stuff, it's cool stuff, and, certainly I like looking at that kind of stuff, and, fun is fun, and creativity is creativity. I'm sort of quite interested in, personally, I like working on PlayStation 4 stuff. I guess it depends what floats your boat, really.
I think an interesting thing about Angry Birds as well is, I think it was Angry Birds, they made like 48 games which did like nothing before they hit that one game which made absolute gold. And for every one game that makes an absolute fortune indie game, there's like 100 of them which make almost nothing. It's very difficult, and it's an increasingly competitive market. But I think it's good that the platforms have shifted so much. You know, Steam has clearly had a big impact, opening up an entire market. And if you look at what Sony's strategy has been in recent years, you know, the whole launch of PS4, we're trying to get indie titles on the ground floor, easily to distribute and very cheap to do. It's opening things out so that console development isn't just big AAA titles anymore. And it's an exciting time to be in, I think.
I have an Xbox One, a PS4, and everything else, and I play Towerfall on the PS4. That's it. I could play it on the U, yeah, but you know, it doesn't matter. Another question. At the back.
Yeah, with the extent of films like Gravity and the amount of CG that you see in films nowadays, do you reckon there'll come a point when VFX houses are actually producing their own feature films, like directors from inside?
Well, Framestore already did a few years back. We made the Tale of Despero. That we haven't done one since, and I don't know whether we're going to do one again anytime soon. But yeah, we had a whole building that was just making Despero, and that was great. And that was actually just before I started. It was as I was graduating.
Was that Framestore's own IP as well, wasn't it?
I'm not entirely sure.
I think that's where you were going down the route, where instead of using Warner Brothers to fund, that the actual, or the whole production is in-house.
Probably not. No. It opens up a side of business that I guess would be newer at.
Yeah.
Obviously, someone higher up the chain would know more about that than I would. But I mean, we have so much under our belt at the moment with commercials, TV, all the stuff that we're doing, that adding like directing and creating, we'd have to have writers, and it'd be huge. It's better to specialise those sort of things.
Aidan, you mentioned about it earlier, that you've got people in-house now.
Yeah, we have, actually, I might let you talk about this, because you haven't said anything.
Who's this guy?
Thanks for that, Aidan. We have our own kind of in-house film team that direct stuff, so that when we go to a client for a commercial, we can sometimes say, actually, we can get somebody to direct that and kind of film that and create that for you. In terms of feature-length films, don't necessarily see us going down that route. Maybe in the future, I don't know. But for commercials and smaller projects, we're doing that kind of already.
At Double Negative, some of you may know that we've just recently launched our feature animation department. It's very early days, so I couldn't tell you what projects we are going to be working on. But we're also working in conjunction with Locksmith Animation, which is the UK's first CG feature studio, which is really exciting. So we will be working with them, but also we may well potentially be working on our projects creatively. So it's a case of sort of watch this space at the moment.
So, yes and no. In the middle? There you are.
This microphone's getting passed on.
No one's willing to. Quite like, it's a good question.
That's a very difficult question for me to answer specifically. Bidding is something that's very, very specific and is in the hands of our producers. I don't know is the answer to that, really. I don't know if anyone else knows. Bidding is a very, very specific area.
I think it's something that's being looked at across the industry in various different ways. We remember last year we had a bit of a rough ride with a few studios doing amazing work and going bankrupt at the end of it, even though it was profitable. So it's changing. We've all seen the VFX soldier stuff and kind of wearing green and that sort of thing, and it feels a bit better from this side looking at the industry a year later, but I don't know from within it whether you're still having picket lines and craziness.
Again, this is probably my opinion, maybe not the Mills, so just personally I think...
It's good caveating.
Yeah.
It's good work.
Thank you. I think something does have to change. I feel that, employees need to have more kind of rights and things like that. And I think you go on set and you know, see everyone is part of a union and is getting paid overtime for a certain amount of time and all that. And that's not happening in post-production. And I'm still not really sure why, because you look at Gravity today, I mean, that speech was just amazing, the presentation earlier, and you just think that 90% of the film was CG, you know, so there's no excuse for it anymore. I think production companies had unions going back, you know, since the beginning of the industry. It's just because we're new to the whole industry, I think, that's why we don't have protection and we don't get these extra hours, and I think that's the root of a lot of problems. I'm not sure anyone knows how to solve that problem, though, and that's the thing. Yeah.
It's being looked at, though. You know, there's a lot of good work out there, and there's a lot of companies doing great things. So it's a good time for well, there's a question: is it a good time to be graduating?
I think it's a great time to be graduating. I mean, if it was me, it's really exciting. I mean, I actually personally felt inspired seeing that talk about gravity today. Like, it just makes me want to kind of, I don't know, model a spaceship or something. But it's a really exciting time. I think our workplace will get kind of better, I think. It's only a matter of time. And, you know, visual effects are not going anywhere, so it's going to be more stable. The only thing is there's a lot more competition, you know. Someone told me this morning that there was 900 applicants this year at Hertfordshire, which is just, you know, insane. You think about how many people want to get into it because they see these amazing effects on screen and say, I want to do that. So the competition is going to get harder, but then also there's going to be more movies, more visual effects, so hopefully there will be more bums on seats.
Just picking up from saying that obviously things do need to change, I think the one thing that you must remember is that London is doing very well, and most of the studios in London who are doing well are able to provide work for artists, and that is a really important thing because there are lots of visual effects artists out in LA who aren't working. So I think the important thing is that work continues, and we are able to continue to employ as many 3D and 2D artists as we possibly can. Is it a good time to graduate? Yes, I would say so. Being here, I think you're very lucky to be here in the UK because there is a lot happening here. But yes, applications, we are receiving more and more, so the competition is getting harder. But yes, so far so good. Touch wood.
Just like to add to that, again, obviously the visual effects market, fantastic in London, but and the games world as well. But ArcViz is another market that you guys can go into, and there's loads of other markets. Don't just be blinded by one area.
Yeah, it's true. There's a lot of work. I was explaining to someone the other day that whatever dream of the career you're going to have for the next 2 or 3 years is only for the next 2 or 3 years. You'll chop and change, and then your skill will get adapted, and then you'll be doing this. Then you might start. It's a long journey of a career. You don't start and then retire in 40 years with one company. It doesn't work that way, especially in this industry.
I think it's really important as well for you guys to be very aware of the kind of contract culture of the industry as well. And I think when you come into your first applications and those sorts of things in your first role, it's very unlikely that you're going to move into a permanent position and be with that company for the next 5-6 years. And it's very important to try and build your own profile in the industry and to be friends with MPC and friends with Framestore, DNEG, The Mill, everybody, obviously in whichever specialisation that you want to work in. And as the guys were saying, that the industry is doing fantastically well at the moment. You'll see a lot of work being done in Canada as well at the moment. So MPC, we have a studio in Montreal and Vancouver, and a lot of it is dictated by our clients. If we want to work with Fox and Warner, we have to be present in areas that are financially viable, and places where the tax breaks are a lot better. So it's an industry whereby if you are graduating, you can travel. There's so many opportunities, not just in London, but globally as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's worth mentioning. I just wanted to pick up on something actually about culture. You know, it's a really interesting thing. Certainly in the games industry, the kind of culture that you could expect as graduates and applying, you know, you go into quite a different culture in various different studios. I was talking to somebody the other day who was saying on a sort of 3-year project, they were kind of crunching 85% of the workforce for about a year. And that's not funny. You know, if you're doing crazy hours for a year straight, you know, working, I know you guys probably have lost a lot of sleep working on your films that we're about to see. You don't want to be working like that all the time. I mean, this is just my point of view. So I think there are some companies that do have, I mean, I think every company crunches, you know, at times because obviously no matter how well you plan something, shit happens and people have to work hard and you always run out of time at the end. You just always do on every project. But I think it's something to be aware of as you go into companies, because some companies are worse than others. Our one's quite good.
Cool. Well, any closing remarks from anyone that wants to give some advice to our group here? Oh, there is one.
Just following on from what everybody's said here as well, I think it's a great time for you to graduate, and it's a great time to kind of get involved in this industry as well. And, you know, I think there's a great opportunity for you to show your work, there's great opportunity for you to get involved, and great opportunities for you to kind of work in post-production. I think, following on from what other people have said as well, it's about you kind of getting yourself out there. It's about you creating your own brand, about you letting people know what you can do and what you want to do as well. I think, you know, sometimes when you're at the graduation stage, you think people are going to necessarily come to you and find you. Sometimes you need to find them. Sound a bit bleak? Didn't mean to sound bleak.
I'm just going to say, in a slightly less bleak tone, as people have said, London is doing very well, but we may be all different companies, but they all are somewhat together. The recruiters talk to each other. They're like, yeah. So I know so many people that just they sort of do a circuit. You go MPC, they go DNEG, Framestore, back again, and it's 6 months contracts that rotate, and there's work out there if you've got a good enough reel.
Yeah.
And I was just going to say that don't give up. It may not happen overnight. In fact, it probably won't happen overnight. We were talking about how competitive it is out there, and yes, it's very important how you promote yourself, and obviously making sure that you're talking to all the right people. But if you get 1 rejection, 2 rejections, 3 rejections, don't give up. It will happen, but you have to be patient. I've been speaking to some applicants for a number of years before we've actually had the right time to bring them on board. But it's those that haven't given up that we've actually finally said to them, you know, we've been speaking to you for the past, 12 months. We've finally got something that's available. But it's those people that make the effort to keep in touch with the company in that way.
Great.
Yeah, just when it does happen and you do get your job, remember you're working in a team. Yeah, so, and there'll be structures that they've got in place, so you've got to adhere to those structures. Yeah, you will make mistakes. We all make mistakes, but it's just how you react after you make those mistakes. Yeah, so learn and keep learning.
And just one more thing is that, you know, getting a job straight out of uni is brilliant, but internships are also a fantastic way to just get your foot in the door, pick up some experience, or like 48-hour game jams like the Brains Eater one I mentioned earlier. Brilliant ways, especially if you win an internship, to get your foot in the door in that industry.
Perfect.
So can I just add to that as well? Running hasn't been mentioned. as well as internships, running is really important. And a lot of people touched on this last year. Lots of people kind of cowl at the thought of running, but actually it's a really good way in, and the majority of our runners end up being employees of the mill. So, and it's actually a really good way to meet everyone that you're going to be meeting, working with in the future, and meeting, you know, clients, and just seeing the dynamic and seeing people work, access to software, you know, and all that. So really, don't be disheartened if you're offered a running job. If I was you, I'd grab it by the balls. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you very much,
So to
guys.
speak.
Do you guys want to make your way down?